I think that yeah, I think that maybe to save a time, you can.
Tora, can I test the voice? Do you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we can.
Okay, thank you. I will only speak after like 4:50 or something. I just want to test. Thank you.
I would like to check Suha and the technical team the link that we got after we register. Can it share with other person?
Yes, you can.
I check this because in case that some person who cannot register, if they would like to
They can join, but they will be under your name.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
luta por ahí. ફોન આવ્યા કરે તો લોતા સારું ના હોય તો એમાં તમે શું કરો? કાપી નાખો. આમાં લોકોને ખબર નહીં પડે ને ગુજરાતી ટુ ફ્રેન્ચ આવે તો લોકો બી નહીં એમાં કન્ફ્યુઝ થાય.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. Now, I'm going to explain about how to use the interpretation in the Zoom. You need to have multiple language. So if you click the interpretation menu on the bottom of your screen. It would look like a globe icon here, and you select channel that you wish to hear. For Bahasa, it's in Japanese channel. Thai is Thai. Vietnam is Khmer is Khmer. Bangla, Nepali, and for Gujarati language in the French channel. We don't recommend you to mute the original audio because you will be able to hear when the language is switched. For the triple dot menu, other, select language interpretation, and then select the channel that you want to hear. That is all. Thank you. Now I'm going to start.
Your turn. You are in mute.
We are starting, Thuaha.
Yeah, please do. We're waiting for you.
Okay. Hello, namaste. Namaskar.
Namaste.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to all to this RS22 webinar on COVID and social protection in Asia, an update webinar. We are a bit late than the prescribed time. Let's start now. First of all, I would like to highlight the aim of the webinar. There are two aims. The one is to update RS members and concerned people on COVID situation and social protection at country level and sub-regional level, South Asia and Southeast Asia. And the second is to review RS principles under the pandemic situation. So we have highly distinguished delegates from trade unions, from civil society organizations, from home nets in the region, from RS members in the region, both in South Asia and Southeast Asia. I think we all have joined comfortably through Zoom. Now, the time in the mentioned in the program schedule that you have received, it is all in Bangkok time. It is follow the Bangkok time. And we are now, let me introduce about the program. We have four sessions, especially 4 sessions. The first session is on country sharing, both in South Asia and Southeast Asia. First, there will be country sharing. There will be country sharing from Southeast Asia, starting from Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. Sorry, Thailand and Philippines, Vietnam. And then we have country sharing from South Asia, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Yet our colleague from Pakistan is joining. We hope you will join and you will share. You'll be able to share. This is the first session. Now the second session is this is sub-regional plan, sub-regional sharing. In this sharing, there will be moderator Professor Rene of Reno, and in the sub-regional sharing, there will be ASEAN and Philippines, ASEAN countries, and then there will be Dr. Sushana Han from Poverty Eradication and Gender Division of ASEAN. We are very much privileged to have Mr. Jamaluddin from SAARC Secretariat in our forum. Then our third session will be started. That is discussion session. This session will be moderated by Professor Rene of Reno. And our second last session will be review principles under the pandemic situation. And the last one session are concluding and closing with way forward. Now we have almost we have program almost up to 5:05 Bangkok time. Now we are a bit late. Now I think this is the time to start our first session. I request all the speakers to maintain the given time so that the following speakers will have ample of time as per the schedule, prescribed schedule. So there will be 7 minutes for each presenter or speakers. Thuha, can we start from Cambodia now?
Oh, please introduce Surendra.
Yeah,
Surendra, we facilitate.
I'm sorry. This session is going to be moderated by Surendra Pratap. He is the director of Center for Workers Education India. Now, this is over to Brother Surendra. Are you there?
Oh, Surendra, I cannot hear you.
I think the same problem to Surendra.
No, you.
Again. Brother Surendra.
Maybe check speaker, the sound.
Hello, Brother Surendra.
Your sound. Maybe you should check the sound.
Let me check.
You check the micro. Check the micro. This one. You should check this one. Oh, I don't know what happened. We cannot hear you. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay,
now,
good.
Then congratulations. Okay,
Yeah.
welcome, Brother Surendra.
Okay.
Good.
Thank
Please,
you.
please frequently check your sound, because while you are talking, it might be repeated again.
Yeah. And now it's okay. I'm using now mobile. I have now stopped my laptop.
Great.
So I
Over to
welcome.
you, Brother Surendra. Over to you. Can you start now?
I welcome all the participants in this webinar and all the people who will be sharing. They have a long experience in the field, so they will be bringing the life from the field. As Om already said, we have limited time, so we prefer that each participant takes about 6 minutes and maximum 7 minutes time, so that everyone is able to speak. So first speaker will be Athit, and he's president Adu. And most people may be knowing that this is one of the biggest unions, garment workers in garment and textile workers in Cambodia. So not taking more time, I will invite Athit Ko to take the floor. Athit. So, hello, Athit.
Athit seems that's not joy, yes.
So maybe we can then move to Indonesia, and from Indonesia we have Rizi Estrada, and I will ask him to. I will request him to introduce himself and then proceed with his presentation.
7 minutes only for each speaker, please.
Yeah, Rizki. Hello, are you there? Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Please go ahead. Hello.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Surendra. Thank you, everyone. Good days. I'm Rizky Estrada from Initiative Indonesia. So today I would like to share the update on what happening in Indonesia under the COVID at least 2 years. So next. Please. Okay. I just want to give the information that the update that the government of Indonesia is giving some interventions under the 2 years COVID. That's under the program of the National Recovery Programs, which is they have 5 clusters who become the interventions of the government of Indonesia. That the first cluster is focused on the health sectors, and then the second about the social protections. The third also giving the national priority programs. The fourth for support corporation support and the small, middle economics, and also the business supports. This is I just giving the overview about the budget state realizations from the 2020 until 2021. That if we show that the state budget is increased for the health sector in the first years in 2020, but also increase it in 2021 because the rising of the new variants of COVID like Delta, and also the last is the Omicrons. So it's a bit different with social protections that increase in the 2020 but have decreases in 2021. So I will just giving more highlighted on social protection in the next slide, please. Okay, this is just the overview about the benefit and the coverage for each cluster under the national's economic recovery. So for health clusters, mostly the budget spending is just for intervention for distribution of the drugs, and then the incentive for the health workers around 1.5 million for the central health workers in the national levels. Also for the procurements for around 300,000 million doses of vaccines, and also health insurance, and also to support the national vaccines, because Indonesia is trying to develop their own vaccines that call it the red and white vaccine. This reflect our flags. So the second point is about the social protection clusters. There is very common that mostly intervene for the poor people. That type is like a cash transfers, pre-employment card for around 5.9 million people have get the pre-employment card. But next is about the electricity subsidies for 32.6 household. But the new things in the Indonesian intervention is the new social protections that develop is about the wage subsidy that can be reached 8.3 million workers. This is the new ones in social protection program that initiated by the Indonesian governments. And for the MSC and corporate clusters is mostly just giving the for the credits. This is support from the central government to support how that the economics can be roll on during the pandemics. And for the business incentive cluster is mostly the central government is giving the incentive priorities for the tax. Income tax covered by the government is around 106 million employers. They covers the tax, and also for the import tax, and also for the value added taxes that is mostly covered by the governments. But this is only for cluster, but the last cluster about the national priority programs that the central government also expend several state budget for the projects for infrastructures. And for the last is like for the circuits, for the sports motorcycle circuit that is part of the national priority program. So the next. Okay, I'm just trying to highlight it, but outside the government interventions, we also are capturing some initiative from the grassroots and also from initiative for the business sector. So we looked at the social protection intervention by grassroots initiative also risings. It started from the people, super peoples, on how the grassroots mobilize the social modality to support other groups when the government cannot reach them. For example, we have several organizations like the agrarians joining with the trade unions to just exchange their food supply chains and also others needs. The second, the rising about the philanthropy digital platforms like the Jamsta, Istimewa ID, kitabisa.com. That is the philanthropy digital platform, how that social can also support other people who cannot reach by the government intervention or by the social assistance supported by the governments. The last also during the pandemics, several organizations also try to demand some new type of the social protection interventions. The universal basic incomes or JAMSA is also rising among the coalitions who are giving encourage the governments to make a new social protection reform inside the governments. And especially for the government worker, they also have an initiative from the business sector, that's the wage subsidies from ILO and with the Germany's organization to support 2,000 government worker. So some key point in the last slide. Hello.
Yeah, 1 more minute.
Yes, this is some several key issue that the Indonesia government will eliminate contribution assistance for the 22 million poor peoples and try to develop new social security for job losses and determine the age limit for the old age insurance. The next is about demand how the multinational corporations for social responsibility to share some their profit for support the social protections. This is also still absurd from the central government of Indonesia. And the third, the rising of the financial technology based on digital under. I think this is also potentials that can be adapted by the grassroots levels of how to mobilize the social modality to support the people who cannot be reached by the central government. So I think that is my last slides. Thank you so much. I return to Surendra. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. It was very interesting presentation. If we had more time, we would have learned more from you, but we have very little time. Now, Miss Lamphon.
Lamphon from Laos.
Of IW yeah. Works and gender home-based work. Lamphon to take the floor. Hello, Miss Lamphon. Are you here?
Yeah, she should be here. Lamphon from Laos.
ค่ะคุณเหมียวพี่อยู่ถามคุณเหมียวถามคำว่าคุณวันชี้แซสกิดในพี่บริวารพี่แซเอง
Would you like me to share the screen or you will share the screen for me?
Hello.
Would you like to share? Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
สบายดีทุกท่าน
Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and brothers and sisters. My name is Lampan Nantapanya from HomeNet Laos. Today, I will discuss about the impacts of the situation of COVID-19 pandemic of informal workers in Laos PRD. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The situation of the pandemic in Laos PRD from the past, like 2020, the first wave infection of Laos is 24 of March 2020. According to the information, we have like 645 deaths and 1,508 newly infected cases in 2022. The COVID-19 pandemic have created several impacts on the life of people, especially the informal workers. The government of the Laos PRD have issued several precaution policy, including the lockdown measures and the closure of the country, limitation of commuting and transportation during the lockdown period. It has slowed down the national economic growth and create impact on the informal worker, especially on their income, their livelihood, nutrition, access to healthcare, gender inequalities, child education, and employment of the informal workers, as well as the formal workers. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are the impact of the pandemic among the workers on the security of income, livelihood, and nutrition. Most of informal and migrant workers in Laos PRD have been impacted directly by the lockdown. Workers cannot perform production process, especially informal workers, producer, and migrant workers cannot sell their product, or they cannot produce the product. Migrant workers were laid off and become unemployed. When they are unemployed, they do not have income to provide themselves and family nutrition. Migrant workers also cannot go back to their previous workplace and previous job. Most importantly, these workers do not have any social security nor access to any social protection scheme. The government have been giving the support by offering an exemption of the social security membership fee or contribution for 2 months. IWA, an NGO or CSO, including Oxfam, has also provided in-kind support. For example, dry food, sanitization kit for informal workers who are impacted in the 4 cities. For example, 600 families in Vientiane, and also give them about 50 euro cash support for family. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The second impact is the access to physical and mental, as well as healthcare and vaccination. Every Laotian, including informal workers, can have free access to COVID-19 vaccination and treatment during the pandemic. The government have the policy to provide free treatment. Even though people cannot adjust to the new normal life, this causes psychological stress and depression among the people because they worry about their livelihood during the lockdown period. The government also try to promote a better understanding on the prevention of COVID-19 pandemic through the provision of health education and giving necessary information on how to reduce risks of COVID-19 infection. This is very useful for the people. The government also provide the information from the Ministry of Health, as well as providing hotline number for people who are at risk of infection. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The third issue is gender inequalities. During the pandemic and the lockdown period, most of workers have to work at home. They also have the duties of care because they have to care of family member. They shoulder family burden because men do not help with the domestic work, and many families also face domestic violence because of unemployment, low income, and lack of food.
You have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, let her come.
บ่ฮู้ว่าฮอดแล้วบ่เหลืออีก3สไลด์
Okay, I have 3 more slides to go. On the child education during the pandemic,
บ่ได้ไปเข้าเลยเนาะ
schools were closed down for a long time during the pandemic. To compensate the absence of schooling, the government provide online course, even though the school will be actually open in the future, but we don't know whether what kind of support and whether there will be children drop out from school. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. On employment, For informal and daily wage workers that they work in restaurants, shops, and factories, they were unemployed during the lockdown period. Most of them lack income. However, the government also provide a certain amount of cash handout for the informal workers who for workers in the informal sector who have social security. The government also provide job fair and also employment support so that they can have more job. Next slide, please. Working at organization and office in the public office, private office, and non-government organization have to stop working at the office. They have to avoid face-to-face interaction and turn to different mode of working. For example, remote working. All of the meeting have to be conducted online. Many workers have to adjust themselves, but at the present, staff in each organization return to work in their office, but still have to strictly follow the preventive measure. Thank you so much. And sorry that I apologize that I have to use like Lao. I hope that this information will be useful for you, and my slide will be available for download later from the organizer. Thank you.
Good presentation. But I was follow later. The next speaker is Dr. Teo Sui Ann. She is Executive Director of Research in All Party Parliamentary Group of Malaysia. Dr. Ann, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Sue Ann. I'm from the APPGM SDG, All Party Parliamentarian Groups. So I'm presenting the social protection during the COVID-19 for Malaysia. Next slide, please. So the impact of the pandemic, Malaysia, we imposed the MCO, the movement control, since March 18, 2020. We are currently still now slowly, gradually opening up our movement control, but we still have some kind of a restriction at the moment. So the following data that I'm going to present to you are survey results from the Department of the Statistics in Malaysia, and also the research report, media reports, and also statement from the NGOs. So we will discuss the impact of the COVID-19 and the lockdown on the socio-economic conditions of the Malaysian society, including the vulnerable groups such as the informal workers and also women, of course. And then you may find the impacts of the COVID-19 likely to just like a ripples of effect that are affecting the different aspect of the Malaysian society. Next, please. So first of all, the direct impact of the pandemic and also the lockdown, of course, is the income security. All of us were not prepared for what were coming to us during the COVID-19. So during the first half of March, when we first imposed the MCO, the employment rates increased to 3.9% as compared to 3.3% in the previous month, with over 600,000 unemployed individuals from the Malaysian workforce in March alone, as compared to 520,000 in the same month in 2019. According to the survey carried out between March 18 to 31st, 2020 by the Department of the Statistics, covering 168 respondents aged 15 and older, we found that 46.6% of the self-employed workers lost their livelihood, while nearly 24% of the entrepreneurs reported the same. Among the sectors, agriculture was most affected by the MCO, with nearly 22% respondents saying that they would have lost their job, followed by the service industry with 15%. Next, please. About 66% of the self-employed workers and entrepreneurs say that their income has dropped by half or more, followed by 32.6% of the private sector workers. 20% of the state-linked company employees. This means that the companies that is related to the government. And also 18% of those working for international firm also having a significant drop in their incomes. Most of the respondents were not prepared for the extension of the lockdown because during the March we extended, as I said, now it's still kind of ongoing. So they were not really prepared, except for those in a government-linked company and also multinational firms. About 66% of the self-employed workers and entrepreneurs state that their income dropped by half or more, followed by 32% of the private worker and 20% and 80%, as I said earlier. So in short, the self-employed were the worst hit by the lockdown. Next. So in 2018 alone, there were 2.86 million own account workers out of the total of 14 million workers workforce. Based on the official statistic during the MCO 1.0, which means the first round of our lockdown in 2020, nearly 50% of the self-employed workers have lost their job, and 90% of them remaining employees receive a lower wages. The self-employed workers have to use their savings to cover for monthly expenses, to pay debts, and also other expenses. So a substantial number of the self-employed fell into poverty. Among the unemployed were graduates looking for jobs. The Ministry of Higher Education projected that up to 75% of the fresh grads from 2020 could not secure an employment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so joining more than 40,000 of other new graduates who were remaining unemployed since 2019. So about 200,000 of the indigenous people across the peninsula, including Sabah and Sarawak, become poorer. They were obviously those that are in need of help. Next. Because of the issue of the employment and also the loss of income had, of course, impacted on the livelihood of many households. So using the sample of 500 households in the capital city of Kuala Lumpur, the longitudinal study conducted in different phases in 2020 revealed that severe cracks in the distribution system, whereby an average household income was only 1,560 ringgit for a household of 5 to 6 members. 1 in 4 household heads were unemployed during the MCO. This is higher than the previous year and 5 times higher than the national average. More than half of the employed heads of household do not have labor market protections, and figure is even higher among the female household heads. The total monthly median earning of the head of household dropped by 1/3 to 1,000 ringgit. Next. Among those who were able to save, only 1 in 6 had enough savings to last more than 3 months, while among female head of household, only 5% say that they had enough saving to last them more than 3 months. Their situation grew worse throughout the last quarter of 2020. Joblessness among the head of household doubled to 15% in December 2020, compared to just 3 months earlier, while 1 in 3 adults is participating household were still without work. Overall poverty rates among the participants stood at 42% in December 2020, with the rate higher among household head with people with disabilities and female-headed household at 55% and 61% respectively. While some families started to recover in early 2021, others regressed and were still close to the breaking points, means that they were still in poverty. Next.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, the increase of unemployment and also the loss of income and poverty has also affected the health of many Malaysians. According to the UNICEF, before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, about 4.8 million of adults in Malaysia were already identified as food insecure. Based on the current prevalence of the food insecurity, an estimate of 9.76 million or 30% of the Malaysian population is expected to suffer from food insecurity due to the COVID-19. Next. So indeed, the Malaysian government took several measures in attempting to help easing the financial hardship of the people, but financial assistance were insufficient to improve the conditions of Malaysians, and only a proportion of people who were eligible for the stipend of financial subsidies by the government. One of the subsidy was Prihatin. Prihatin was a wage subsidy policy specifically for the former employment only. So the subsidy is given for the workers who earn less than 4,000 monthly salary by giving them a 600 ringgit per month. And workers who are left behind in these subsidies is, of course, the informal workers, the self-employed and unemployed family workers. And subsidies of 500 ringgit for 120 e-hailing drivers. Lestari's program or also the Employment Provision Fund's contributor are allowed to withdraw up to 600 ringgit from the account too. But remember that Employment Provision Fund is also the money that these workers have been saving through their monthly salary before this. So they are actually just withdrawing their own money. The government just allowing them to withdraw their own money, but not giving them any kind of a subsidy for a next of 12 months. But most of the contributors are, also, of course, the former employment workers. I don't think I will have time to go to the mental health. But these are some of the mental health conditions in the Malaysian case. Perhaps later the organizer will just share the slides with the participants and you can have a look. Thank you for my part. Thank you. Hello?
Yeah, thank you. Surendra, you are
Brother
in mute.
Surendra, where are you?
You are in mute. I can have to invite the next one. I don't see Tiha from Myanmar, yes. So maybe next one will be Philippine one.
Yeah.
Oliver, right?
Yeah, good afternoon. I present to you the COVID update in the Philippines and our social protection agenda. Actually, 2020 and 2021 is the worst years for health and economy, which of course, after India and Indonesia, Philippines is the most COVID affected in area and in Asia. Thus, our economy has shaken into negative 9.5% of our GDP in 2020 and still negative in this 2021. Thus, many businesses, jobs, livelihood collapse due to largely to running lockdowns with government stimulus, poor management of pandemic, especially in 2020. Most affected were the informal sector, precariat workers, senior citizens, and of course the children, and not to mention the persons with disabilities. We had a surge in mass unemployment, underemployment, poverty, misery because of the death, and of course mental health. Social amelioration, though we have that under Bayanihan 1 and 2, but it is too limited and we're still waiting for the Bayanihan 3 to push by the Congress. Our major issues and problems. Port too little, too late, and income and livelihood security, thus resulting hunger and stress. Healthcare system and workers under severe stress. We have an inadequate funding for healthcare and other forms of social protection, even if the need for social protection program is magnified by COVID. Problems with targeted schemes do not cover the real poor, near poor, or the new poor created by COVID. So, of course, if you are rich or poor, because of COVID, you become poor. Gender issues and gender-based violence intensified. Digital divides worsen inequality. Disasters due to climate change aggravate the COVID impact, and the top-down approach to COVID containment in many cases limits, if not suppresses, citizens' participation in addressing the COVID crisis. Next slide, please. So, of course, the home-based workers remain the hardest hit sector in most of the workers in the formal economy, and mostly women are being affected on this pandemic. The 2022 COVID under control, yes, but the economy is surging. Now comes 2022, we can say goodbye COVID, but we really don't know if really COVID has gone away. After 3 million, more than 3 million and more than 59,000 deaths, now down to only 330 new cases and 131 new deaths. No, but in stagflation arrived. Economic stagflation, rising inflation with skyrocketing oil prices here in the Philippines, and deepening unemployment. Can a good program of social protection save the nation, save the poor? How do we build up social protection in COVID stagflation times? So reality check, we have this universal health care, but it's not fully implemented. PhilHealth patient spending more on out-of-pocket expenses. Social security system, regressive and exclusionary. The informal is limited to assist participation, and we don't have even past our Magna Carta of workers, the informal economy, which we have this since 2002 on our advocacy for the protection of the workers in the informal economy. So limited pension for the elderly, stunted children meant limited social protection. And right now, teenage pregnancy is rampant in the Philippines. And even in our region, where the most high teenage pregnancy cases. With COVID, more negative revelations. 23 million target beneficiary for the SAP or the Social Amelioration Program, but only 2/3 receive benefits deemed by many as paltry or given one time. Health sector are broken and in crisis. So broken healthcare system, missing underdeveloped health facilities in most places, privatization and the commercialization policy bias. We have the healthcare workers underpaid, overworked, migrating because of the low salary. Then we have high cost of medicine, import dependence on TNCs. Of course, 50 to 60% out of pocket expenses, so what I've said a while ago. And our total health expenditures is only around 3.5% of our GDP. Then we have high infant mortality rate, maternal mortality, misgovernance, and corruption cases in failed health unresolved. Then underdeveloped infra for the universal health care program to cover only limited pilot areas. Like a telenovela, it will take 3 to 6 years for the program to unfold, according to DOH official, or Department of Education. Can government fund social protection under current crisis? We have, well, from 5.9 trillion into 2016, we have debt of 11.7 this at the end of 2021. No? Therefore, our debt ratio to GDP is above 60% from 39 in 2019. Debt service for 2022 is only 1.3 trillion. So we also have the civil societies and trade unions are alternatives to address fiscal distress. No, we also have make taxation system more progressive, and with the train and create, well, government to lose 500 billion in 5 years under the new law, the create law, which is favoring the PESA or the economic zones. And then we also have the review of debt management program and negotiate for better terms and cancellation.
You have one more minute.
What are the coping mechanism during COVID-19? Well, we have borrowing money, and we spent our spending and a lot more. We minimize in eating. Some eat twice a day. And then we have support people's initiative. We community-based COVID prevention, testing and treatment. We organize or support organic agriculture, community gardens, pantries and kitchen. We do savings and loan association to facilitate livelihood recovery. We bridge the digital divide communication, education and marketing. And we have the community-based COVID proofing and climate proofing to resiliency building, solidarity-based action for relief and recovery. So we have this case social protection demand, universal social protection, which life cycle, to address life cycle, gender responsive, disability protection, reducing the premium or subsidized payment for social security or mandating social insurance, expand the benefit, especially to those in the rural areas, formulating registration and information dissemination, and of course, we are asking for more social assistance. So to save lives and livelihood of workers, of informal workers, we call for social protection for all, as what I've mentioned of our key demands. Conclusion, with global and national economic uncertainties due to stagflation and global disorders, government, and of course, in our upcoming election here in the Philippines, we are asking that to take a firm stand
on the role of SPS development instrument, not only to help the weak and vulnerable, but also to ensure nation survival, recovery, and sustainability. Role of social protection is crucial in triggering growth and development in crisis times critical. But for this to happen, government must cast aside economic policies that are anti-poor and anti-social protection and even anti-Filipino. That's a quote from Dan Rene of University UP Soler on his paper, Building Back Better, the National Social Protection Floor for Everyone and Juana in the Philippines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So we will share the slides of Dr. and this Miss Parilia to the participants so that they can go through it. Now let us move ahead, and the next speaker is Miss Suntari H. Sengjing. She is coordinator of many organizations, coordinator of HomeNet, Southeast Asia, and member of NGO Coordinating Committee on Development. So we are really privileged to have Miss Suntari in our program. So please.
Suntari, your turn now.
Yeah, thanks.
Miss Suntari.
Will you share my PowerPoint? I will share the experience of home-based worker and other workers in informal economy sector of Thailand during COVID-19. Can you share my?
Sorry, what is the name of the file?
Or may I do it? May I do it myself?
Yes, if you may. Thank you.
Let me share. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Suntari, because you haven't sent it, so
I already sent it.
Oh, really? Okay, I will put.
And this is from my sharing.
Okay,
no?
okay, please.
I will share the experience of home-based worker and also other workers in informal economy sector of Thailand during COVID-19 and the measure of the government and what is our demand. First, about health, on health issue, I would like to share that access to vaccines is convenient for home-based worker and all Thai citizens with free of charge. But we have universal.
Alas 5, alas 8 ng gabi. Bakit ngayon alas 3:30?
Sorry, I hear some voice.
Bibilisan mo talaga dahil 7
Oh, Oliver, please mute.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Access to vaccine is convenient for home-based worker and our Thai citizen with free of charge. It's because we have universal health coverage scheme and most Thai citizens got at least 2 doses of vaccination. Only undocumented migrant workers that found difficult to access vaccines. All medical treatment for people who got infection are free, whether for being in patient department or in community isolation or home isolation. But the problem is when the number of infection cases is high right now, more than 30,000 cases per day. So it's hard for people to register to the treatment system. I would like to go further, but how can? On livelihood, the impact of COVID-19 to livelihood and income is hardest issue for Thai home-based workers and other informal workers. Home workers who are at the bottom of the supply chain, especially for the global supply chain, lost all their production orders. Some of home-based workers, both home workers and self-employed, try to start a new or second job, such as switch from handicrafts, from handicrafts, small enterprise to be food vendors. And also some case, they switch from leather bags and shoes home workers to be lottery sellers. According to the study done by HomeNet Thailand, Vigo, and Chulalongkorn University Social Research Institute, we found that the income of home-based workers reduced more than 60% in 2021. And their average income is zero during COVID-19. 88% of Thai informal workers have to reduce their quality of life. 53 reduce their consumer product purchasing, and 44 draw out their saving, and others 31% are in debt. During COVID-19 crisis, the government measures, we can say that almost all government measures that home-based workers and other types of informal workers have got are only the immediate relief or short-term measure. Like government distribute cash for independent worker, 5,000 baht per month for 3 months. 5,000 baht is about 50% of our sorry. รายได้ขั้นต่ำ what we call it, the minimum wage, yeah, 5,000 baht is about 50% of our minimum wage. When social security scheme measure is like
video start video
like you know, you already know that we have voluntary social security scheme that home-based worker and all informal workers can apply by paying 2/3 contribution fee, and the government will contribute 1/3. During the COVID-19 social security scheme,
please mute your mic when you are not speaking, please. Disturbance.
During COVID-19 social security scheme distribute 5,000 baht again for voluntary social security insurers in the highest risk provinces that affected from lockdown policies. And
you have less than 1 minute, half minute.
Yeah, I will try. Because the noises as well, is this disturb my presentation. And the social security scheme reduced 40% of the fee for voluntary social security insurer for 2 times. First time is 3 months, and the second time is for 6 months. This is my last slide. The demand of HomeNet Thailand, like we consider COVID-19 crisis as a chance to review the existing social protection scheme, and we demand on the new benefit of voluntary insurer that all of us are there. First is to cover unemployment benefit. The second is to cover maternity benefit. We mean 3 months income for breastfeeding women informal workers. And The other demands outside of Social Security scheme office is we call for universal child allowance and appropriate child care centers. And at the same time, the demand from trade union movement that benefit all workers, include home-based worker, is they demand for worker banks to use 10% of administrative budget of Social Security fund that used to invest in bank system already, but they will, the demand is to use this amount as the loan guarantee for all insurer workers if we would like to borrow the money from the banks. And these proposals are already approved by the board of Social Security scheme, and now we are waiting for the consideration of the cabinet. That is all of my presentation. Sorry that I used more than 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Surendra.
Thank you. You finished your within.
Yeah, I will stop my sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Surendra. Sincerely.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very interesting presentation. We have last speaker from Southeast Asia, Dr. Do Pinchi. She is Director of Research Center for Employment Relations, ERC. So the floor is yours, Dr. Do.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. So I hope that the organizers can share my presentation. So actually, the presentation is based on a survey that the Research Center for Employment Relations, together with the members of the public-private partnership working group for the garment and footwear industries of Vietnam, conducted between September and December of last year.
I will share the screen.
So, yes, thank you. And so this research is mainly about the garment and footwear industry, which is actually the two most labor-intensive industries in Vietnam, and employ around 4 million direct workers and about 6 million overall of direct and indirect workers. So if you go to the second slide, please. And if you can also share, show the slide, not just here, but you can, just put on the slideshow. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is some brief about the methodology. We covered almost all regions of the country, as you can see here. However, we focus more on the southern region because this is where the lockdown has affected most. And because this industry is mainly women, with 74% of our women, and also most of them are women with children. So the outcome of this survey also show very much the picture of the impact of COVID-19 on women in Vietnam. Next, please. So if you can see here is some of the key findings from our surveys. We found that during the 4 months of the lockdown in summer and fall of 2021, 63% of the garment and footwear workers in the southern provinces were temporarily suspended. And because of that, actually 62% of them had no income at all for almost 4 months. And this is because actually many of the employers in the industry were SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, and sometimes also household companies. And they faced with all the disruption, with sanctions from the buyers, all the cancellation and all these problems. That's why they ran out of resources to support their workers during the lockdown. And it was one of the main reasons why over 60% of the workers had no income during the lockdown. Next, please. But this has created a double crisis for the workers. On the one hand, the workers faced with COVID infection, the level of infection was pretty high, and also high level of mortality rate. But we also found that by September of 2021, About 30% of the female workers in our survey suffered from hunger, and not just themselves, but also their dependents, their children. 16% lacked essential medicines because they were in the lockdown areas and they didn't have access to the sources of medicines. And also the rate of domestic violence almost doubled from over 30% to 53%. Next, please. And in terms of mental health, the impacts of the COVID-19 on mental health of the workers has been consistently bad in the past 2 years. And I think this is the trend in any other countries in the world. And we found here that nearly 70% of the workers reported constant anxiety and insecurity, but 34% reported that they had some signs of depression, which is prolonged stress and insomnia. Next, please. With regards to the support for the workers, we not only review the support from the government, social protection programs and support packages, but also we look at many other sources such as the philanthropists, the social organization, the authorities, the employers, family and friends. And we found that actually the workers have access to diversified sources of support. However, the problem is that all these support are infrequent and very fragmented. Say, for example, the support of food. As you can see here, actually, food is the most pervasive or common source of type of support for the workers during the lockdown. However, this type of support only happened once, for example, among the philanthropists. It happens once or twice, but it does not continue throughout the lockdown. And second is cash assistance. Normally, we find that the workers have access to some one-time cash assistance, for example, from social organizations or from the authorities, from the government packages. But in terms of frequent cash assistance, which is the most important source of support for the workers to go through the difficult times of lockdown, is limited to family and friends and only account for about 22% from family friends and the same from companies. And for other sources, actually, this source of support is very rare. Next, please. And if you look at the government support packages, so far there have been 2 support packages that have been reimbursed. The first one in 2020 and the second one in 2021. In 2021, the package was over $1 billion US. And if you look at the overall packages that the government have given for both the affected people and affected businesses, and also fiscal stimulus packages, the rate of support for Vietnam is only 7.9% of the GDP, which is very low. If you compare that with the average rate of ASEAN country, which is about 15.7%. And in terms of the support packages that was initiated last year, we found that from the survey, the disbursement rate was very, very low. By September last year, only 9% of the workers who were suspended had access to this support package. And for the employers, about 35% had access to 1 or 2 types of assistance from this package. And one of the main reasons for such low accessibility to the package is because not just the lengthy procedure, but mainly because the source for this package come from the provincial and regional budget. And actually the provinces in Vietnam have been facing with exhaustion of budget themselves dealing with the situation of COVID. That's why they didn't have enough budget to support the affected workers. Next, please. And this is the last slide. Actually, this is some update for this year. So for this year, the economy of Vietnam has shown signs of recovery. And the government is also promising the third package of over $10 billion US. But we don't know yet about how this package will be reimbursed, whether it can overcome the difficulties that we mentioned earlier. And the government is also increasing the overtime limits for the export industry and also discussing the possible increase of minimum wages, which have been frozen for 2 years. However, the economy of Vietnam is facing now with high inflation and labor shortages, which have resulted in increasing pressure of wage hike. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for finishing in time. So this was also very interesting presentation. We will share this also to all the participants. Now we are moving to South Asia. In South Asia, we have 4 presentations. So, and first is, so I am Surendra Pratap from India. I will very briefly explain you the conditions that famous during the lockdown period and the workers that are facing the impact till now. The first thing was the announcement of the lockdown was arbitrary without any consultation and without any preparation. And that's why this was done on 20th March. And the pay date is 7th to 10th of every month. So you can imagine that they were out of money the first week of April. So this was one of the, they were not able to pay. They were not to pay for food, and lastly they decided to march on. So they decided to go back home. And the second problem was there was no organization. You know, is very low, and made you realize that how important this issue is. There is no organization, so they were at a loss what to do, and there was no one to tell them what to do, and that's why lastly they decided they will march. And then there was severe crisis was created, of multi-dimensional crisis was created. You may be knowing that there were many babies who were born on roadside, and they were born and mothers were marching again after 2 hours. So you can imagine it was horrible, and the access of health services was completely stopped. So you can imagine that many children missed their vaccination, many ill people they missed their medications, and all these things happen. And then coming to the government packages that were announced. In this particular section, first section, we propose that the to avoid this kind of situation, and there must be mobile health services that some it's implementing that announced. That was very good kind of packages were announced for relief, and but that did not reach to the people because of some problems. For example, there is a provision under employees state insurance, that is health insurance plus some other insurance done for the workers who are the former workers. And this plan that or in so this period, and it is was that was and the work was a clause that they must provide an evidence. So that was possible for the evidence, and that's only probably 10% of the workers were able to claim those benefits. And it's came for PF withdraw the 90% during that period because out of wages. It was a government order that said that the employers, all the employers must pay full wages for the lockdown. Our employers protested, and the government withdrew its order in the May. They announced in May because the government, the employers challenged the order in the court. And also this was arbitrary because there were two kinds of employers. There were small employers also and big employers also. The small employers were facing a lot of problems because, for example, in garment industry, there were a large number of employers who were in losses because the buyers did not pay the money for the shipments they made, and the orders were also reduced. So that way they were in losses. So the government lastly withdrew its order, and that benefit was only given in some bigger factories for 10 days of March and half of the basis of April. And other than that, there was no benefit was given to the workers. And then when they came back, the workers, when they came back, what happens? The orders are low. I mean, the economic slowdown is there. Orders are low, and that's why the demand for workers is very low. And but on the other hand, the workers are reaching there. So a lot of supply of workers. What is happening is, so the employers are now pressing the workers to accept the low wages, work on the low wages, and workers were actually compelled to work on the low wages. And this is the situation currently. And lot of high proportion of workers are employed now on the informal positions, and those who are in the formal position, they also are receiving low wages. And the social security and other things, a huge proportion of workers are denied social security benefits nowadays. Because of they are not challenging it, because the crisis of unemployment is so high that they don't want to speak much. So this is the situation the workers are facing nowadays. And if you want to study the details, I will share the report that we made, that research we have done on this issue. And for now, this may be enough, I think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
And
Surendra.
thank
Your
myself
internet
also.
is a very bad. So for the first part, it's hardly to hear. I think that is a big challenge for all interpreter. But anyway, we can move to the next one from Bangladesh, Asas.
Yes. Thank you, Tuha. Thank you, Surendra, and thank you, everyone. First of all, I would like to share the detailed social protection in the national budget of Bangladesh. Next slide, please. Social protection in the national budget. You know that in total budget there is 603,681 crore taka. 1 crore means 10 million, and 1 taka means 86 USD. So and the social protection is 17.83% of the national budget, that is 3.1% of the gross domestic product. And from previous year, the amount is increased by 12.5%, and beneficiaries also increased 1.5 million. And the lackings and the negative side of this is almost third of the amount of this social protection allocation is retirement allowance for government employees. And also another important and big sharing also allowances for freedom fighters and so. And next slide, please. And for workers, it is a little amount only. You know that tea workers only 3 million USD, and for legal aid for the workers 3.08 million. Working lactating mother only 33 million. Money for work, another important and big share for social protection for the worker, those who will work for money, that is 178 million. And also employment generation program, that is for those who have unemployed or poor will work for only 100 days, and it is allocated 196 million. And interest-free microcredit for self-women employed 0.71. Then agriculture rehabilitation 47, and also unemployed worker in RMG sector. This is the first time government has allocated, second time, and previous year and this financial year government has this portion, this allocated for unemployed worker in ready-made garment sectors. Next. And impact on in informal sector, that garment supply, you know that Bangladesh is the second largest export oriented country, sometimes third. Vietnam and Bangladesh is competing. So diminished work and earnings of home-based workers have diminished due to, as they are dependent on RMG sectors, and in Dhaka 90% of the home-based workers had no work during 2020 first 3-4 months of lockdown, and it is the estimated by Home South Asia Studies, and by August half had managed to find some work. And it is also known that at least 60% of informal sectors workers have lost their jobs and lost their works during first few months of the lockdown, and around 30.5 million workers in the informal sector lost their works or earnings in the 2020 shutdown, and also around 3 million workers in hotel and restaurants have been impacted. Also 40% of construction workers, that means 1.6 million construction workers are totally unemployed, as government has enforced a lockdown shutdown, and totally the work has been stopped. And also 88% of all farmers economic losses owing to production and marketing problems in the first few months of the lockdown. And then next. And in 2020 as whole, the flow of migration decreased about 69% from previous year. You know that Bangladesh is one of the pillar of the economy is remittance. So this has been hurt, and more than 46,000 female migrants returned to VD from 1st April to 17 December 2020, and a lot of them didn't able to bring back their holidays due to lockdown and government and also that country's lockdown and restrictions. And 90% of homeless living in Dhaka had no work during, I have already mentioned, and hawkers usually enjoy good earnings during Eid year. You will know that hawkers are in footpath in roadsides. They have their main earnings period is Eid to Eid festivals, but due to lockdown, due to shutdown, due to restriction, they have been impacted a lot. And then next slide. And in formal sector, cancellation of orders worth 3.15 billion USD in RMG and resulted massive loss of 2.2 million workers have lost their or impacted. And throughout the year 2020 and 2021, significant increase in job losses or disenfranchisement of workers. And also Bangladesh earned 16,884 million USD in network in 2028 and 19, but it has been reduced in fiscal year 19 and 20. And a significant number of workers in leather sector also lost their works and faced challenges due to lockdown and shutdown and also other impacted. And next, please. Now, government responses in this government has stimulate 500 million stimulus packages, majority allocated for workers' wages and benefits in RMG sectors, and then 30,000 crore taka for formal sectors, including leather sectors and such other sectors. The loan facilities of 20,000 crore have been provided to the cottage, micro, small, and medium enterprises. And government also announced 23 stimulus packages involved the taka 12.2 billion, that is 3.7% of the country's GDP for
you have 1 minute, Asad?
1 minute. And then approved 5 projects totaling and reinforced scheme of BDT 30 billion in income professional farmers. And then next. And cash relief, government has PM announced direct assistance of 7.6 billion for informal sector workers, 1 billion for health workers and others, 12.5 million for families and those who have each family have 2,500 taka, and then some others, NGOs also, NGOs, businessmen, politicians, and some others also have responses. And then next. And this is the situation of vaccination. Government has covered 57.9% of the people population in Bangladesh under vaccination, and also 2 dose has been completed in 76.5%, and vaccination is totally free for the citizens. And besides this, I have some things. You know that Bangladesh has during 2020 and 2021, the school has been shut down. It is maybe it is the long period and record for world, and also child labor has been increased during lockdown. Also gender-based violence also increased during the COVID shutdown lockdown, and this is, and that way forward for this we have our plan is to ratify 102, and then special stimulus package for informal and formal workers, and also a budgetary allocation. And our demand is also allocated budgetary allocation 5% of GDP in social protection. So that's my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Asad. Thank you for your insightful presentation. And now we move to Nepal. Mr. Om Thapalia. He is co-founder and currently the executive director of HomeNet Nepal. So Om, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brother Surendra, and all the distinguished guests from South Asia and Southeast Asia. I'm going to put my slideless presentation and especially focused on what we have done from our end during and after the COVID-19 situation. Let me start from our capacity building effort. We have organized 584 new women workers from 7 subsectors. I mean, construction, transportation, home-based workers, domestic workers, agriculture wage workers, and waste pickers. After organizing them, we have built their capacity. We have built the capacity of grassroots leaders of the grassroots workers. So far, 54 individual leaders of the grassroots workers have been capacitated through 2 different levels of capacity building training on 2. One is social protection and other is gender equality. Because during the COVID-19, we found that the major issue is gender inequalities in informal sector workers. After conducting 2 series of training, we have mobilized them to the respective subsectors to bring more, to identify more informal sector workers who are in bottom of the production or works, so that their issues will be come up with the agenda for our further advocacy work. Then we have jumped into awareness raising program with tools, developing tools, radio jingles, TV PSA, web videos, and massively, airing from the, from the media, several medias, so that more people will come with issues, understanding of the informal sector workers. Then we have done one research, external research on informal sector workers in Nepal during the COVID-19. I'm not going to describe on the findings more now, because if you want to know more about the report, we are sharing the report to all of you. And the person, Mr. Umesh Upadhyay, who have done this research as a lead researcher, is now here with our in our meeting now. Let me back to the findings, few of the findings in coming. Along with this, we have done several recovery works with the other partners, ActionAid, Care Nepal, Engage Nepal, and government also. During the COVID-19, we have provided 2,850 set of COVID kit to the individual needy people who are most affected by COVID-19. Also, we have provided food support with nutritious food support to nearly 4,000 needy people. We have supported 1,500 children on their education through conducting community learning classes, and we have also provided psychosocial counseling to the needy affected families and COVID patients. And mainly we have provided support to isolation wards so that people in need from the informal sector workers will have reached to the COVID hospitals and isolation wards. Again, we have done an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the Ministry of Health and Population, and we are now working with the hospitals so that the needy people from the community can have quality health services free of cost from the public hospitals. And we are responding now with them to reduce gender-based violence. And if there is if the violence is occurred, then to provide them the health services, including psychosocial counseling. So this is what we have done during the COVID-19. And another one major task we have done is we have developed a network of like-minded organizations, of 34 like-minded organizations throughout the country, with whom we are working now. And we have produced and submitted demand paper for alternative jobs and protection, social protection during the COVID-19 from the government. So we are hopeful with the government that they will include our agenda, our demand in the coming fiscal year budget, because the COVID is almost overcome, but the impact of the COVID-19 are still there with the families of the informal sector. And let me come with that research we have done.
You have 1 minute more.
Yeah.
Yes.
1 minute more. I know. Yeah. In the research, we have categorized our findings in 4 categories. The first one is regarding the employment and livelihood. And the second category is food and nutrition, and third is public health, and the fourth one is women and children's security protection. So I'm sharing the report with all of you. Thank you very much for listening my speeches on our impact, on our action and its result during the COVID-19 and beyond. Thank you so much.
Surendra, you are up. Yeah.
Thank you, Om. Hope you can share your research with all the participants. Maybe Tuha can share.
Right now. I'm sharing right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we were not able to go through it. So this, do we have Vijay Kumar in our participants? Do Vijay Kumar? Is he there?
Oh,
and Khalid? And Khalid also not there.
Sri Lanka, yes, I think the Kumar's there, right? Please, yeah. But
Kumar
Pakistan, we not present.
Kumar is there.
Yeah.
Okay. So let us move to Sri Lanka. Professor Vijay Kumar will be presenting for Sri Lanka. He is president of Lanka State Workers Union. So he has a long experience. He was a professor and a trade unionist. Now the
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah.
Ima, please send the
Can
previous.
you share my slides? Yes. Next slide, please. Now, there are some favorable aspects for Sri Lanka in the sense that historically we were a welfare state which are slowly losing our welfare state position, but we have free and universal free health, and it's at all good government hospitals, service of high quality, and this can be shown by the fact that our maternal rate, mortality rate, and also infantile death rate is like the Scandinavian countries. So but now there are challenges because there is a growing privatization since the 1970s, and the demand is a little high, but still it is able to meet the demand. But many tests, prescription drugs, sometimes there is a shortage and things have to be got from outside. We also have free education, but this free education is not of universal quality. Free education, the rural and the state schools are questionable quality, and there is an alternative private schooling called international colleges, which is available for usually in the cities and expensive, and they are addressing foreign exams, not the local exams. So because of all this, we have our number who is below the poverty line. Our figure is quite low compared with the rest of South Asia. But recently we have a new problem. We have an economic crisis, partly caused by the COVID, but also caused by other factors. Before 2014, we have taken lots of big loans, especially from China, and used these loans for infrastructure projects which have no income at all or very low income. So we have a lot of money owed. Now the grace periods are over and we have to pay a lot of money back in the next few years. Then also because of COVID, we have lost some of our income, tourism and migrant worker income. So our GDP growth has gone down. In 2020, it was minus 3.6%, 2021 minus 3.3%, and 2022, we do not know how much it is. I think 2029 plus 3.3%, sorry. 2022, we do not know how much it is. Next slide, please. So our unemployment is low. But we have an arbitrarily fixed minimum wage. Our minimum wage is not a wage on which you can live on. Actually, if you with the inflation that has taken place recently, it will allow you to have 3 cups of tea and 2 buns for the whole day. So government is, but because of your patronage, a lot of political patronage, it has expanded the state employment. Government is overstaffed, but government servants have better social protection and they have pensions on retirement, which are about 60 to 90% of their income. We have also increased our armed forces. Our army has increased after the war, and the number of personnel has increased, and funding has not reduced. It's always increased. So this is in fact like a dole, because army, large workforce was supported, and through political patronage, there is a lot of staffing in government. So it's like a dole, but it only mainly caters to majority community because there is more MPs from there, and also the army is also fairly from one community. The private sector, there is a formal employees are 24% of total employees. So they have a social protection of between, including the worker contribution between 20 to 25% employees provident fund. In addition, there's a 3% employees trust fund paid only by the employer, and they are entitled to gratuity if they serve 5 years. They have medical and maternity leave is there for at least 14 weeks. Sometimes it's even more. Then the OSH, of course, the compensation is too low. There is a new act about to come, but it is still not come. There is termination is a little difficult, was a little difficult under, because we have a thing called the Termination of Employed Workmen's Act, and that required permission and compensation are well regulated, but this is only for the formal sector. Estate workers are agricultural workers who are considered formal, but they are low pay, they work more hours, and they have less holidays. But they had some advantages of the COVID because they are isolated from the rest of the community. The work was not affected by COVID, but of course they have a high poverty rates because their income that they are paid is rather low. The income will
You
be
have 2
about
minutes.
double minimum income. Informal workers are 20%. We have formal employees of 20% of the informal workers are employed in formal establishments. They have the same social protection, but no termination protection. Thank you. Next slide, please.
You have 2 minutes more, right?
Yeah. Informal employees, 59% of those employed, 49% are non-agricultural workers. 89% of the agricultural workers are informal. As I said, the 11% of the estates are considered formal. But the major groups of own account workers in service sector, three-wheel drivers, about 10% of those employed. The tourism support staff, about 8%. Informal employees also include temporary casual staff in small shops and restaurants, and the agency provided manpower which looks after security, janitorial, and other services. And they are legally entitled to EPF, ETF, maternity and medical leave, but often not because they are ununionized and there is low labor department monitoring. These are the ones that are most informal employees are most affected by COVID because of lack of social protection and low trade union membership. Next slide, please. So real incomes have decreased after COVID. Employment income loss, greater effect on the informal sector. But government has made a few support payments, about $30 each, 2 to 3 payments last year, and now they are promised this year to pay the same amount, but because of the dollar having gone up so much, it will be only $20. They are offering 2 more payments, but this is a minor amount, doesn't do very much because the cost of living has gone up so much. Healthcare access and vaccination, first 6 months there was a delay in vaccination, but there was an attempt to use indigenous medicine and religion. They were trying to save on vaccine costs, but later it improved and the good health system helped. And because it's an island, there was no inward travel was less, so we have been less affected by COVID. Most of the population over 18 have had 2 doses plus booster. Social media campaigns prevented coverage because there was some talk of vaccines causing sterility, and many youth avoided it, and COVID cases were below average. Not so many deaths, but we are very poor testing. We have testing you have to pay for, and there so many people do not test. Our nutrition levels have come down because of the high cost of living. The cost of rice and things have gone up by 50%. Next slide, please.
You're over time.
Okay, one more, I think one more slide. Okay, so education not very successful, online teaching. Many students did not have hardware, and the internet signal is not strong enough in rural areas. So we have not had proper teaching for 1 year. No major gender discrimination. And of course, in Sri Lanka, gender-based violence is not publicly discussed, so we have no idea whether this had an effect. COVID prevention, how we used to stifle trade union activity. Social distance rules prevented agitation, impact on union organizing, and they used it to break strikes. Also, they came to understanding trade unions where they were able to send workers on furlough at 50% income. And also because they are able to use the TWA, that is the Termination Act, they were more liberal and a lot of people were terminated. So that was the main effect of COVID on the working population. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijaya. Surendra, you are
Thank you, Professor. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Vijay Kumar. So we will share your slides so that everyone can see whatever your research is. And these were the presentations from South Asia and Southeast Asia. As I can see, as I was able to understand, the impact of this COVID was in terms of increasing unemployment, poverty, and gender discrimination, and also pressure on wages. These came as the main aspects almost in all the countries presented made presentations on this aspect. And these aspects actually aggravated the overall crisis of social protection. Nature may be different, but they were reflected in these aspects in almost in every country. So this was almost a general feature, both in South Asia and Southeast Asia. Now we will move to the regional presentations on this COVID and social protection. And Professor Rene E. Freno will moderate this session. He is currently the president of Freedom from Debt Coalition and also the president of Integrated Rural Development Foundation and also the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice. He is Professor Emeritus of University of Philippines, and he was the Dean of the UP School of Labor and Industrial Relations for many years. He was always in all our
That's very long already.
very actively participated in our program.
Can I have 1 minute? Thank you, Surendra. Can I have 1 minute before Dr. Rene? Because maybe we need time to turn on all camera for taking some picture. Ima, can you have?
Yeah.
So we do the photo, group photo now.
Yeah.
Okay, please turn on camera.
Good idea. Please, everyone, you on your video.
On. Yeah, turn on your camera.
Yeah.
Hello. So Ima, please have. When you finish, just tell us.
Okay. On my mic.
Satro, Rizky, Surendra, Josephine.
Okay, I'm going to take the picture now. One, two, three. Once more. Hold up. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now floor you.
Professor Rene.
Okay, thank you. Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Surendra. You forgot something in my biodata. I'm a friend of Surendra and Apollyon. So, anyway, after that very fruitful country sharing, we shall now proceed to regional sharing. Actually, Asia Pacific has 4 to 5 regions, but we are focusing on 2 major regions. These are Southeast Asia and South Asia. And so, immediately we shall now proceed with the presentation by Dr. Susanna Han. He is the head of the Poverty Eradication and Gender Division, PEG, of ASEAN. We are very grateful that she can make time for our this very important webinar. Welcome, Ma'am Dr. Susanna Han. Yes, thank you.
Ima, please share PPT.
Yes. Did you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, can I have the slides?
Ima?
Yeah, thank you very much for everyone, and I am very excited and would like to be humble with your time because I know your time is very short, and would like to to start with the initiative very briefly of the ASEAN in terms of the social protection toward the COVID pandemic in ASEAN. I will present what ASEAN in the ASEAN country, what they have been done toward the resilience and the inclusive communities. So I would like to start with my first PowerPoint. Yes, I would like to start with my first PowerPoint. You can see that during the pandemic, the progress of the poverty has been increasing very much. We can see that the number of the 20, that is the estimate by the World Bank that the 20 million people will have been faced with the extreme poverty. That is the number 20, and this is a 2021. So the blue line is the number of the people before the COVID pandemic, and the red line is the number of the people who faced with the extreme poverty during the COVID pandemic. And the number 24 is the enduring in the peak year in the 2020, and 20 million is 2021. And we will find that unemployment in ASEAN has risen from the 3.7 to the 5.4 in 2020. So this means that the people in the workforce will be very much faced with the unemployment in the region. And if we go to the next slide, we will see that who will be the most vulnerable group. If we see into the yellow color, we will find that the female and the youth will be very much impacted with this pandemic compared with the other group. So the youth and female consecutively note by the 3.9% and high as the 6.2% unemployment loss in 2020. And if we look into again who will be the vulnerable group, the 20% of the school children across the East Asia and the Pacific will be encountered with the difficulty in the remote learning. They have to study and sitting with the computer and online. So this will be also impact to the school children. Not only that, among the school children, they are also the children with the disability, with that constitute for the 7.8% or the 18 million in total. So the children with disability have very limited access to the learning with the study at home. So next slide, please. If we look into the social welfare development cooperation in ASEAN, we have one committee in which we call the senior official group of the social welfare and development. That are the group of the official in the Ministry of the Human Security and Social Development in ASEAN country. So they commit to three things. With first, to build the resilience among the ASEAN people from the poverty to the health pandemic, and support the regional cooperation and the unity of action. And the third thing, they commit into the regional assessment of the social protection on the context of the pandemic, particularly to the vulnerable group. So next slide, please. We will see that we have the ASEAN, so in adoption in 2013 on the ASEAN Declaration to strengthen the social protection. And the evaluation will be conducted in this year of the implementation. In that 2013 that we submit to the ASEAN Summit, which is the high level adoption of the Declaration of ASEAN in 2013, it is said that social protection will be a basic human right. And the second thing is the protection, social protection will be adaptive to the change in the economy, in the labor market, and the impact of the disaster. And also the social protection, for sure, as many people has been already present in your presentation, we need the comprehensive involvement of the government, private sector, and civil society. So next slide, please. In the framework, so this is, I already mentioned, we emphasize on the equitable access of the social protection, social welfare, and also regard the social protection is as the investment in the people. This is the human capital in the people to empower people to meet the basic need. In terms of the mechanism, so next slide, please. This is a big picture, and I would like to explain. It's very easy that we have the vision of this regional framework, and we have the objective in reduce the poverty, inequality, and also we concern on the risk, on the environmental risk, on the core objective of the labor market, how to improve that, how to regard into the social safety net, and also the key strategy that we think about to work into the comprehensive view with the organization in ASEAN. So next slide, please. So the key result area of this framework, first, we promote the evidence-based national service assessment. And second, we promote the regional statistics to measure the impact of the pandemic. We can see that in last year by the cooperative by the UN Women and ASEAN Secretariat in many countries, we produced one document we call Gender Outlook that provide the statistic disaggregate by gender, by the sex of women, men, and among the group of men and women, we also have the labor force and elder people. So that is the pioneering Gender Outlook, first the publication in ASEAN to see the statistic data, how the different impact, how the different quality of life of the different group in ASEAN is. So the next slide, please. Incorporate with the ASEAN social protection framework. So we have promote, also provide the social protection indicator when we have the framework. So we have the indicator. For example, the indicator, for example, that we will report the case of the violence against children and the women by the government regularly. So this is example of the indicator and how the poverty eradication in ASEAN country reduce. We also look into the statistic in terms of the gender disaggregated data. So next year, the Gender Outlook may be developed again by the ASEAN member state cooperation. And next slide, please. And also, next slide, sorry. Yeah. And I would like to highlight the ASEAN response to the COVID pandemic. First, the ASEAN member state in every country, as you provide the presentation in many countries before, the country respond regularly that to report the COVID pandemic outbreak, and also recognize on the statistic data and the policy measure on the economy that scale up and expand mitigate the effect to the financial stimulus package. As you mentioned that in Indonesia, in Thailand, there's a lot of stimulus package, but this also we learn a lot on the challenge, and we not say that this is really smooth and good practice, but we learn a lot on the challenge of the accessibility of the vulnerable people. And the adoption, ASEAN also have the one document we call the Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which lay a lot of the set of the broad strategy and the priority measure and the long-term development of this. So this is the document that has been carried out by the ASEAN member state. And in every country conduct the rapid assessment for ASEAN to provide the clear picture of the impact of the COVID pandemic. So next slide, please. This is the document that ASEAN developed, the ASEAN rapid assessment. One thing that we found significantly that due to the community lockdown, as you mentioned in many countries in your previous presentation, I also have seen that we have looked into the violence against women and children that have become more hidden in the corner of the home and in the online world, putting women and children at more risk. So the online exploitation among the vulnerable people, particularly the women and children, will be another initiative that ASEAN has highlighted on. And also we found that in every ASEAN member state, as I mentioned, we have the economic stimulus package and also some response measure that has been introduced immediately by the ASEAN member state. But as I mentioned, we also learn on the challenge. We will not say this as the best practice when a lot of things that it has been learned from the ASEAN member state. So next slide, please. This is the comprehensive recovery framework that I mentioned. This is the phase of the plan that ASEAN has developing this. So the 5 broad strategy area is first enhancing the health system, strengthen the human security, and also maximize the potential of the intra-ASEAN market and to be brought on the economic integration along the border, open more smoothly for the economic along the border management and accelerate the inclusive digital transformation. It means that because during the COVID pandemic, you will see that a lot of micro, intermediate and small scale of the business has been done by particularly the women. So how women can access to the inclusive digital platform effectively, and also advancing more sustainability and resilient future. So next slide, please. This will be the last slide. So ASEAN has been highlighted in the 3 key areas. First, whole of the community recovering approach, taking into account the economic and the social fallout, particularly highlight the vulnerable group of the people who has not been access to the service that government has been provided. Second is to regional recovery framework that we have the ASEAN comprehensive recovery framework, but it has to be implemented in the ongoing and ensuring that this will be inclusive by the ideology that we will not leave anyone behind. And the last thing is sustainability along the environmental inclusiveness. So the business as usual will be no longer an option, but business has to also fostering the low carbon economy, green economy, and ensuring the long lasting recovery. So I would like to end my presentation with the big picture of the overall ASEAN integration and ASEAN measurements on the COVID pandemic in this. I would like to highlight that maybe my presentation is not tapped into the evidence base that is highlight the finding. This is really value from the grassroots level as many presenter in the previous presentation, but I would like to highlight the big picture and overall picture that when the regional framework and what is the regional collaboration that we are doing now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sultana Han. We
Yes.
hope you can share not only your PowerPoint, but also those documents that were mentioned in your PowerPoint, because sometimes it's so difficult to download some of these documents. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Now, from Southeast Asia, we move to South Asia. These are the 2 most populous regions of Asia Pacific. You see, we have this Australia, New Zealand. We have East Asia, mainly South Korea, Japan, China, and then we have the Central Asia. But these are the 10 countries, but they are mostly supposedly part of the old Eurasian complex. Now with South Asia, we have a presenter, Mr. Jamal Odin Ahmed. He's a director of the Southeast Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. And there is a term here, ARD and ADF. I hope he can explain this to us. Welcome, Mr. Jamal Ahmed.
Thank you so much. Respected moderator, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Can you see my presentation, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, good afternoon. Yes, sir.
It was very nice to listen to all of you. It was a very intriguing discussion indeed. And today I will be speaking on SAARC's response to COVID-19 and cooperation on promoting social protection in the region, as well as its achievements and challenges. SAARC deals with many diverse issues like cooperation in trade, energy, climate change, culture, and so on and so forth. Instead of discussing all of these aspects and considering the time constraint, I will put focus on poverty alleviation, agriculture, and COVID-19 related issues. Poverty alleviation remains as one of the most priority areas of SAARC. Our leaderships have time and again expressed their commitments on taking all possible measures to reduce poverty in this region. On SDG, SAARC recognizes UN SDGs and aligns its own policy in line with the SDG. We hold regular meetings of ministers and secretaries to discuss and formulate action plan on reducing poverty. We also have technical committees tasked with implementing those decisions. When we talk about poverty alleviation, issues like gender equality and empowerment of women become very pertinent. We have technical committees on labor and migration. We also have committees on women, youth, and children, which work on reducing social and institutional vulnerabilities of the poor, women, and children. And also we have committee on, also they look after ensuring effective participation of poor and women of in anti-poverty policies and programs. We have technical committees on labor and migration that I already discussed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, SAARC has 5 regional centers, one of which is SAARC Agriculture Center, which could be more relevant to today's focus area, because South Asia is home to nearly a quarter of the global population, and majority of those population depends on agriculture and livestock for their livelihood. Agriculture sector has already been challenged with many adversaries like shrinking arable land, vulnerability to climate change, natural disaster, degradation of natural resources, animal diseases, and so on and so forth. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has compounded our adversaries. I will discuss how SAARC Agriculture Center helps regional farmers to cope up with these adversaries. On average, SAARC Agriculture Center holds 20 events annually. Those are basically need-based regional consultations and or capacity building and professional development programs. Besides, they gather information on agriculture from all of the member states and agriculture and allied field, and disseminate that information among other member states. They publish a journal on agriculture, which includes quarterly news updates on agriculture. Also, they carry out in-house research activities and publish the findings. They also sponsor PhD scholarship programs.
Oh,
yeah. SAARC also looks after a few mechanisms of SAARC, like SAARC Seed Bank, SAARC Food Bank, and SAARC Seed Forum. All of these have been established to ensure food security in this region. We have some UN and non-UN partners like International Rice Research Institute, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, Food and Agricultural Organization, International Livestock Research Institute, International Fund for Agricultural Development, and International Food Policy Research Institute, IFRI. Effect of pandemic on the livelihood of farmers in South Asia. Production of crops, there's no significant impacts on staples have been observed. targets will be more or less met. On provision of inputs, some disruptions were observed in imports of inputs during initial stage of the pandemic due to checkpoints at the border, but those are resolved through prompt action by authorities. Provision of labor. Provision of labor was an issue in some countries due to the reverse migration of labor to their home country or to the hometown, and restrictions of movement due to pandemic. Panic buying and stockpiling were observed during early phase of pandemic. And we also observed budget cuts for agricultural ministries, and there were export bans on agricultural commodities too, which were lifted later in the. Overall, there has been disruption in supply chain management. In general, there is loss of income of the poor people, and which has led to increasing economic equality. SAARC's response, or Survey Agriculture Center's response to COVID-19. SAARC held virtual meetings to assess, discuss, and coordinate activities with its stakeholders. It formulated new project proposals and programs to address the pandemic. It sensitized relevant stakeholders to adapt resilient agriculture in South Asia. Besides, SAARC Food Bank mobilized 2,000 metric ton food grains from India to Bhutan during pandemic time. There are a few flagship projects which were taken before the pandemic. However, those have been reinforced and adjusted with COVID-19 realities, like a livelihood enhancement of the small farmers in SAARC region through small-scale agribusiness, focusing on value chain development. This basically creates employment for poor farmers. And secondly, they had a consortium for scaling up climate-smart agriculture in South Asia. See success in short. We believe that this could be our way forward to help our farmers to cope up with the looming adversaries, like promoting digitized agriculture in South Asia for faster outreach, exchanging knowledge and impart technical backstopping in crops, horticulture, livestock, fisheries, and policy issues. Resource mobilization, of course, promoting cost-effective mechanization in South Asia, climate-resilient technologies, and diversified livelihood options. Besides, guaranteeing sustainable food production, processing, trade, and retailing are also necessary. In a nutshell, these are the goals of SAARC Agriculture Center, and to digitize the agricultural value chain and help farmers to cope up with this pandemic. As concerns planning, we want to help farmers to plan what and when to plant, to strengthen a relationship with buyers and processors, to provide data for farmers to make business decisions on cash flow and maximizing profit. As concerns inputs, we are helping them to reduce costs and risks for buyers, and we share information with them through our publication to increase access to quality inputs, to provide convenient and secure ways for farmers to purchase, save, and receive credit inputs. As concerns on-farm production, we help to extension services, and we ensure that it is as many farmers as possible. We recommend to use behavior change media to promote best practices among farmers. As concerns post-harvest storage, we help them to improve links between farmers and processors. We inform harvest practices to reduce post-harvest losses, and to increase farmer negotiating power. We recommend to increase farmers' negotiating power by providing market prices, to track governance for supply chain optimization and grading. On transportation, we help them to reduce costs of transport and increase choice of different types of transport for farmers. And lastly, on access to markets, increase market for information available to farmers so that they have more choices. That we do through our publications. With this, I stop here. Thank you very much for your patient hearing, respected moderator, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir, for keeping with the time. Friends, in this webinar, we have time for discussion. I think Surendra can join us in facilitating this next session. Given all this country sharing and regional sharing, The question is, what is the way forward? Are we going back to the old normal? But what is the old normal? Or is there a new normal? And then what can governments and civil society do? Maybe any reaction? I can see Santari is smiling. Maybe she has some input or points to raise. Anyway, if there's no anybody raising hand to her? Yes, we see the hand of Brother Kumar. But make your intervention short so that we can have more from different. Okay, Brother Kumar.
So I think we should consider the COVID-19 problem together with this Ukraine-Russia war, which is also affecting all our economies. That's all I want to say. We can't separate that. It's complicated the matter. The war in Ukraine. It's affecting all these countries' economies.
So I think what Brother Kumar is saying is that it's difficult to imagine the new normal given the reality in the world today. It's very uncertain, and some people describe it as VUCA, vulnerable, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But and then we have problem now of this inflation due to rising oil prices and rising prices of food, especially bread. Any other comment? I see the hand of Santari. Santari.
Thank you so much. The thing that I would like to share is according to the last presentation of 12 organizations that work on the ground, we found that COVID-19 affect a lot, not only health, but also their livelihood and the security, we can say life security of people. I would like to suggest, I use the word suggest, both regional body for Southeast Asia and also for South Asia to use this crisis as a chance to review the existing social protection in your member country and improve it to serve the problem of vulnerable people and also workers, both formal and informal workers. I think it's a time to review and start to do new things to serve all people in the two, we can say the big region of this world.
So your
my suggestion.
Thank you, Santari.
We still not happy for only short-term message. We need to go further to, how to call it, to improve the whole system of social protection for people.
Yeah, I think Santari's suggestion is quite consistent with ILO recommendation 202 in 2012. It says that in this resolution, in this recommendation, for social protection to happen, there should be a rethinking of social, economic, and employment plus policies that will enable the fulfillment of social protection. So this is a good time really for thinking and rethinking. Thank you, Santari. I see the hand of Dr. Rosalinda. Rosalinda.
Good afternoon to everyone. Sorry, it's so noisy here, but I'd like to follow up the suggestion from the ASEAN representative because I was struck by the statement that in ASEAN, they are saying that we cannot return to business as usual. and that we need to reduce carbon footprint and go into a circular economy, maybe social solidarity economy. But that is a departure from mainstream economic policies that we see have harmed the ASEAN peoples, like privatization, like unfettered trade liberalization, import dependence, that many ASEAN countries continue to follow. So how will that, what concretely is ASEAN promoting to say or to move forward and move away from business as usual? I would like her to amplify that point further if she can.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. But before Dr. Han respond to you, maybe we can accommodate first some comment from Surendra. Surendra, take it away.
Yes. You have accommodated me in right place, because Rosa Linda has already started means that conversation what I want to do. I think this is the time when we observe that the way of liberalization or the liberalized economy and politics that we adopted after 1990s, that has produced the first biggest disaster. This has proved that liberalized economy is not able to cope with these situations. Means, for example, I take some basics. We have to go to some basics. Like before 1990, particularly in India, hope in other countries as well, there were programs of industrial housing. Now the workers were getting the rented accommodations in the industrial housing programs. Now what happened in the lockdown period, because the industrial housing is not there and wages are very low, and that's why workers were living 4 to 10 workers in one room without kitchen and without washroom. They were queuing up, means 7-8 rooms with one washroom. Then you can imagine how they can go for social distancing and all those things. This is impossible. Means this if this kind of disaster comes, they will all die because of these things, no? And then second thing, you can see the health, privatization of health during the lockdown period, and even after that, when you don't have much of employment, much of income with the people, the most serious problem they are facing because of the deterioration of the public health system and privatization of public health, this health system. So I think we have to start now. We have evidence, we have disaster, we have to now seriously challenge the whole liberalization of the political economy and think about alternatives now.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you, Surendra. Can we hear now from Dr. Susanna Han? Would you like to respond to the earlier question? Is he in the room?
Yeah, Han. Susanna Han.
Yes. Can you please a little bit clarify the question a little bit? I have not catch up on that.
Oh, well, I'm so maybe Rosalinda can
Okay, very short question. Can you explain further what is meant by the last statement that you read, that ASEAN recommends that we should not return to business as usual, and that we should now go into lessening carbon footprint, circular economy, etc., in the light perhaps of climate emergency and perhaps the conflict in Ukraine, that really drove up oil prices beyond the reach of most people. So really, we need to go into renewable energy. But I don't know how ASEAN will interpret or will push that last point, which is very important.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roslinda. Now we have the in ASEAN we have the AICHR, the ASEAN Intergovernment on the Human Rights, and we are developing the due diligence of the business. You can see that how the business can have the measurement and how the business can tackle into the measurement to cover with the environment. So some kind of this initiative, I think will help a lot to build up more standard of the business and the industry in the ASEAN.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, I think it's a very interesting point that how ASEAN can form that will be stronger to tackle with this the business to recognize on the importance of the renewable energy. But I think this is the starting point that ASEAN has been done during this COVID pandemic. Yeah.
Well, at this point, let me point out that the observation that we cannot return to the old business as usual is now I think is shared by almost everybody based on the country reports and also by, but some government officials are thinking of going back to the pre-COVID and then situation, which is really a return to the old normal, and that is not so good because the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, ESCAP, they have been monitoring the performance of Asia Pacific in terms of fulfillment of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And the report for 2019 before COVID says that almost all countries are on course in failing to meet the SDGs by 2030. Some are even falling behind and some are just stagnant. But with COVID, the situation is worse, and this is validated by the reports of the different countries. So the big question now to all members of this webinar, how do we really move forward? I think that's a very important question. And I think part of the answer can be provided by our next speaker for the next session, Rizky Estrada, Initiative of Indonesia, because he will, is this a man or a woman? Rizky will review the AROS principles that we can apply under the pandemic situation. So can I turn over the floor to Rizky Estrada? Is this okay? And then if you have more questions, raise them to Rizky Estrada. Thank you.
Thank you, Rene. Rizky, your turn now.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, Rizky.
Oh, how are you, Prof? Nice to meet you. Yeah, I just to try to wrap up some several principles from our discussions for rising up of all the speakers. So maybe the wrap up that can be, we can took as a takeaway from these discussions that during the COVID, I think is disturbings of many of social dimensions. So which mean that I think it's good for us on how we make some keep in mind that many of principles that perhaps that can be run in the each countries. And also we also need to how to encourage us new alternatives schemes and about the social protections and how to overcome them. Several people who cannot reach by the social protection schemes or programs, and hopefully hopefully we also can also think about how that we also can adapt some the technology to adapt to some digital platform, how to mobilize social modality to support people who cannot be covered by social protection that deliverings by the governments in across the Asias. I think that's the key takeaway that hopefully based on this our webinar can be take to your country and still more creative to increase the new idea, the new alternative of the social protections points. I think that's several points that I can wrap up based on our webinar, and thank you for from ASEAN representative also. This is also a good point on how that we can also hold and monitoring how the ASEAN's frameworks is implemented in each countries. I think that's all from me. Thank you so much for the webinars that hopefully this key takeaway can brought our idea and can doing a good activity in your groups in each country. I think that's all from me.
Rizky, thank you, Rizky. Because Rene already introduced you to start the next section on reviewing AROS principle. So can you do it now? AROS principle. So under the COVID, under the new situation, so any critical point on the AROS principle? You want to work to review together with people?
Okay, about the AROS principle is still a bit same, but we push about the how that we also creating the transformative social protections. That is the key rules of the AROS principle. So the social protection is not only looks only on the schemes of programs, but we also have 3 pillars how the transformative social protections can also based on the life of cycles, based on the human rights, and also have a gender perspective. So which means hopefully the AROS principle can also can be kept as a principle. So which means the social protection programs need considered in the 3 pillars of AROS principle. I just mentioned life cycles of lives, gender perspective, and also based on the human rights. So which means that yes, social protection is our rights as a human rights. I think that the points of AROS principle that hopefully we can keep post the webinar and still keeping on our works in your groups. I think that's the point, Suha.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rizky. Dr. Professor Rene, you want to say something more before closing?
Yes.
Okay, please.
In addition to what Rizky mentioned, we have been AROS in this series of forums in the past. We have been talking about the importance of enabling conditions, because it is enough that we list down the different goals of SDGs and of course meeting these requirements of social protection. We all know that transformation is central in all of this, transformation of the economy and society, but the transformation would require the establishment of enabling conditions. And some of those enabling conditions would require overhaul of what Surendra and Santari and Dr. Rosalinda mentioned, the need to review this one-sided economic liberalization program, probably in support of what our friend from SAARC was mentioning, strengthening the agriculture, domestic agriculture of each country, and the capacity of each country to address the food and hunger needs of their respective population. There are many things that need. The present crisis is really an opportunity to do a thinking and rethinking of what should be the transformative programs leading to enabling conditions so that social protection and then those 17 SDGs can be met. Maybe others can have something to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rene. In fact, we don't have time anymore, but I can share a little bit some point on the charts. For example, from Assad say the rich and become richer and capitalize more money. On the other hand, the poor become poor. So the government should take initiative to reduce income gap and strengthen the social security. That is one thing. And others idea is from Sartre. Transformative social protection is a new normal. No left behind, comprehensive, equal, fair, universal, etc. Social protection for all the people. What we dream before even COVID-19 and now become even stronger. And so maybe we can close the discussion section now. And I would like to invite Marble out for director of AMIC to give the closing mark.
Yes, thank you, Toha. And then first of all, I really like to thank all the guest speaker that provide a very good presentation. And then just now, I also find it very impressive because some of the speakers are giving their presentation in their car drive. So and then they still putting out the PowerPoint, and then all the PowerPoint with their presentation is synchronized. So it's very impressive. And I think that from that we can see that a lot of us, the partners, and then the partners groups, and then the speakers in our network are very passionate about the topic, and especially after the pandemic for fully 2 years already, and then we are still in different stage, and in different country or different cities experience a different stage of the pandemic, and then different level of the pandemic, and then it is very difficult. And then we saw the difficulties, and then I think that in some of the presentations, that apart from sharing with us that how difficult of the grassroots and then the workers in no matter formal or informal sector are at, but then some of the presentation also mentioned about the civil society, like the groups that working with no matter the trade unions or the labor groups are also in very difficult situation. The members of the trade unions are either unemployed, and then or else that a lot of workers are in the old days, we call that like certain kind of underemployment, that they are on the surface that they are still having their job, but then in reality they don't have any pay because it's just no work, and then no orders, or they cannot go to work. So facing this, that the groups also lack of resources or the strategies to on one hand that we need to support them, and then on the other hand that we need to find out new strategies on like organizing and also to reflect the needs. Like just now, we knew that there's even the regional level and saying that it cannot be business as usual. That means that there should be some new things coming into the picture. But then we're still struggling with that new strategies to cope with the new normal. So so for all these information are very important. And then the discussion is very impressive because not only informative, but then we feel the passions of everybody want to find out ways to provide more support to especially the grassroots, the poor, and then the people in informal sector. And then and also the principle of have to be gender sensitive, and then concern on gender inequality, and also equally important is the concept of inclusion, like people from different different ethnic groups, and also whether they are migrant workers in certain places, and also with a different religious background, and then with different disabled. Like we have a lot of workers were actually victim of occupational health and safety, like occupational accidents and disasters. And then after that they become like either still have the disease or long-term patients, or they become disabled. And all these also need to be taken care of. And then we also need to highlight their needs. So it's all cut across with the concept of inclusion, that we have to put them into the picture and then reflect their needs. So by knowing all these and then having this presentation from everybody, I really feel that the meeting is very important. And then we AMRC as the regional group, that we will consolidate this learning and then to integrate into our work in the future. So we still have another meeting tomorrow, and then we will continue the passion of the discussion, and then we will consolidate all these learning into our work. So but today is thank you for everybody, and also thanks for the interpreters, and then thanks for the colleagues that who has been working to prepare these meetings. So thank you.
Thank you. And please join our meeting tomorrow on the digital technology and solidarity economy. What we already started to say today. I will send again the invitation.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much to all of you.
Bye bye. Bye
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Okay.